Hello everybody, my name is Mariusz Skrobala from Poland. Welcome to my channel CONSERVATIO. Usually I do talks in Polish, but you can find some very interesting content in English on my channel as well, with some very special people from Italy, with a journalist from United States, Alex Newman, and some others. So I please follow and join my channel. And today joining me from Milan in Italy, a very special guest and a rising star in the international Identitarian movement, Andrea Ballarati. Welcome, Andrea.
Good morning, Marius. It's a
It's a
pleasure
great
to be
pleasure
here.
and
Thank you
honor.
for your invitation.
Yes, it's a great pleasure and honor to have you here. So, Andrea, you're an author of a great success of Remigration Summit, the first international conference that took place in Milan this year. But before we go to this event, I would like to talk about the concept of remigration. What is it? Why is it so important for the politics of Europe at the moment? Because, in my opinion, we are witnessing two crises in Europe. So the first one is the demographical crisis. The ethnic populations of Europe are declining in birth rates. If you go to Eastern Poland, if you go to Eastern Germany, I suppose it's the same in the south of Italy. You see empty villages, empty towns, so the population is declining. And on the other hand, we have this great crisis with mass immigration coming to our shores from all over the parts of world. Immigration, in my opinion, invited here by the political left. So please tell me, what is the concept of remigration? Why is it so important? Why the identitarian movement is promoting it?
So, essentially, remigration, this word that has taken the political sphere by storm in the last few years, is a concept where we want to see essentially this huge immigration inflow getting limited, stopped, and then reversed. This is what remigration means in the simplest of terms. Okay, it's a plan that we propose to be promoted in three phases, and those three phases are essentially related to the feasibility of each phase and each task that the phase requires. So essentially, the first would be to tackle the illegal immigration problem, which is at the moment the main driver for mass immigration in the West. With it, it would be also necessary to reinforce the whole legal structure to avoid having situation like here in Italy, but in general in the Western part of Europe, where immigrants essentially are allowed to do pretty much anything without any legal consequence. They can rob, steal, rape even, and they will not go to jail because some judges will just let them be free. So it's really common to see immigrants with very long, let's say, penal case stack against them, but no legal action actually taken to, I don't know, expel them or imprison them. So this is another problem. The second phase would tackle all the legal structure already present for residency, permits, asylum, etc., and also citizenship. Because the problem is also this, mainly in the Scandinavian countries like Sweden, there is this, how can we define it? This way of giving out asylum permits, which essentially grants an immigrant the right to be eligible for the welfare of that state. So they essentially contribute nothing to the economy and they take all the benefits with them. And then they have the possibility to send the money back home. They have the possibility to take their family and bring them in. This is being tackled by the Swedish government because, of course, it was a disaster what happened to Sweden in all senses, also in crime, in the economy, etc. And it underlines how important the economical and legal incentives are for this massive system of immigration, because we need to remind ourselves that this immigration crisis is not something that just came out from nowhere, like the media wants us to believe, that it's just natural and cannot be stopped or controlled. This is by design. It's documented. There are organizations, of course, criminal organizations that act on behalf of other organizations, which are as of now less criminal, but we consider them so, that essentially ship millions of people from their countries of origin to North Africa or the Balkan route and then ship them to Europe. So this is by design. The ethnic substitution, if we want to call it that, it's by design. It's not something that's happening randomly. And so remigration essentially is to tackle these incentives for them to come here. The last phase is related to what happens after remigration is applied, because of course there is this declining birth rate problem, which is related to many causes, and many of them are not economical in themselves, because yes, economy is a problem, but you need to consider that if you remove this mass of people that are here without contributing anything to the economy and making our streets unsafe, then economically speaking, the wages will go up, because the main reason many immigrants are brought here by the multinationals, by the big industrialists, is to lower the wages of the workers, because they will accept lower wages. That's just the law of demand and supply. So you will raise wages, which is, of course, a benefit to the population. Then you will free up houses and housing, which is very relevant in countries like the UK or Ireland that have a housing crisis as of now, and which have made the housing problem one of the main issues about immigration. And just these two facts, let's exclude everything else, otherwise it will become a lecture on economics. Just these two incentives will essentially grant young families to have children and have a place to put their children, because that's the problem now. And the whole other plethora of cultural identitarian issues will just need to be as part of a state policy to essentially reclaim these identities, these cultures that have been progressively eroded since the 60s and the revolutions of the 68 and that period that we had in Western Europe and in America, social revolutions, let's say, that brought all these rainbow policies and politics on the political stage, that would grant the cultural impulse to let people make children. I also want to add one last thing, which is that the current demographic decline is something that naturally happens, because we need to consider that during the 60s, we had a population boom. So what happens? People made a lot of children, 4, 5, 6 children per family, and then it's only natural that when you have people doing 2 or 1 children per family, the birth rate just declines. So we need to find a balance here, because we cannot, of course, afford another population boom like this. But we cannot also afford to have couples just making 1 children per family. If I'm not mistaken, Italy is just at the level of 1 children per woman as of now. So we are already in a critical stage, because we risk, of course, going extinct, which is the central issue right now. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, it's great. Of course, the situation is the same all over Europe, because in Poland we also have a catastrophical level of birth rates. I assume it's even the same in England and France, but they are improving the statistics, bringing a lot of people from outside Europe, so we cannot trust those. But okay, let's go to the Remigration Summit that you've organized in Milan. You had a lot of
Yeah.
complications on your way. The left-wing mayor of Milan, Sala, went crazy. The media was writing about it. They were trying to do everything in their power to stop it from happening. Can you tell us a little bit about the difficulties that you had that led you to the final success?
Yeah, so let's say I had a lot of fun playing with the media and those politicians because what happened is that we started promoting it on the 1st of January, right after in Milan there was this image, viral image going around of immigrants occupying the statue that's in front of Milan. I do not know if you have been to the cathedral, the Duomo. There is this statue of Victor Emmanuel II, the King of Italy. And immigrants climbed onto the statue with their national flags and started saying stuff like, Italy's shit, we are the rulers of this country. Two of them were expelled, so that was funny to see, honestly. But this caused, as you can imagine, a huge backlash from people in Milan that are tired of the situation. They're really frustrated about it. You can see videos of people going around and just screaming at pickpockets or beating them up. And that's just regular administration right now in Milan and in big cities. That's what's happening. And it's unfortunate, honestly, because in a civilized country, those things shouldn't be happening. So Milan was really the most sensible choice for the Remigration Summit because in Milan we have the center of the left wing intellectual, let's say, political sphere because Milan is the richest city in Italy, we can say, we can safely assume. It's big, it's a financial center, and the whole left-wing movements like Pride, etc., they take their strength from Milan. So we just played in their own courtyard. This is why they panicked, because that was panic, that wasn't a political move. And the mayor did the mistake of saying that he would have liked to ban the event, which is something a mayor cannot do unless there is a proven, let's say, illicit action going on. It's a conference, so there was no illicit action, and people on the undecisive or right-wing camp, they saw this and they looked into the summit and they were like, why are you banning it? And so there was the whole media fuss. There were other media outlets that are extreme left-wing outlets, as usual, with communist organizations, because in Italy we have communist organization coming from the old political communist party that we had in Italy, which was the strongest in Europe. And those organizations actively tried to make our event either fail or get banned. So they started putting pressure on politicians, on the police, on people housing us, because we got canceled 3 times and all in the span of a week. So that was a really hard thing to come through. The tension, as you can imagine, increased as the summit neared. And I must admit that I was pleasantly surprised by the support from the Lega party, because without their help in some things, we wouldn't have been able to make the event the success it was, because they talked about remigration, some of them, like Isabella Tovaglieri, that came to the summit. She is a member of the European Parliament for Lega, and other local politicians like Alessandro Corbetta, who is very interesting, that vocally opposed Sala and supported the Remigration Summit. So what the left did was allow us to have a lot of support to make remigration mainstream. And this is why I thank the mayor of Milan, because without him, we wouldn't have had this success. Like, it's all thanks to him. Otherwise, it would have been, the usual conference, a bit boring without anything happening. It wouldn't have been this media success that it was, that will allow us to build an even greater event. I'm so sorry I cannot say anything about ReSum 26, but there is some names in the air that's just at another level as of now. You will know in due time. Going back to ReSum 25, the political left, the violent political left, the whole communist organizations, they mobilized, seeing that they couldn't do anything institutionally or with media to destroy us. They mobilized with their violent organizations, with the Antifa. And at that moment, we started playing with them and we started telling them, oh, yes, we are going to do it in Piedmont, or we're going to do it in Milan, we're going to do it in Como, we're doing. And they got so confused that they just decided to mobilize in Milan. And their genius plan was to take the train, come to wherever we would have been, and try to shut it down physically. So the demonstrations that were in Milan were these communist people trying to physically get to our venue to shut it down. That's what happened. They started clashing with the police. They got beaten up, of course, because that's what Antifa does. And afterwards, they were trying to accuse the police of and us of being like, usual fascists, or you use the state against us. It's all you're doing, like, literally. And so that was the last gift from the left, because they gifted us the best dichotomy between us and them. You had a conference held in peaceful terms where people discussed politics, and it was so full of young, elegant people from all over Europe. It looked more like a fashion show than a conference, honestly. You can look up the images. And on the other side, you had this Antifa just clashing with the police, dressed as they do, with a banner which was very curious, saying, "Make Europe Antifa again." So first, they need to steal the mottos of the political right, because they cannot produce anything on their own. And second, Antifa again means they acknowledge they have lost and they are losing. So it was perfect. It was a great success. The fact that we are speaking about it, it's a testament to it. And again, ReSum 26 will be even bigger. I do not expect the same media pressure, because it will not be in Italy. This is what I can say. It's going to be around. But in Italy, the climate still about it, like as you know, I got assaulted by some Antifa 2 weeks ago, was doing an event, not even in Italy, in Ticino, in Switzerland. And they still took it as, oh, you see the aggression against the ReSum organizers, etc., which is true, essentially. So this shows that the left is still afraid of what we can achieve with remigration.
At the beginning, you said something interesting, that everything started with an attack on a statue in front of Duomo in Milan. I haven't heard about it, but there's exactly similar situation few weeks ago in France, where the immigrants attacked the statue of Joan d'Arc. And in my opinion, it's a symbol. It's a symbol. They are attacking historical statues to give us a sign we are taking over this place, this country, this continent, and we are despising your history, your identity. So it's not a coincidence that they are doing it. We saw the same thing in United States, where Black Lives Matter destroyed, literally destroyed a lot of statues. It's a symbol. We are taking over. Another interesting thing from what you said, the left tried to stop you, but in fact they gave you power and they gave you media attention. So the whole great success of the Remigration Summit, they contributed to it. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yes,
and
they
you
did.
had some interesting guests, and now I hear from you that a member of European Parliament was there and that Lega in fact supported you. That's a very good news because some kind of mainstream influence is always needed, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yes, yes, actually. Without Lega, like our goal with the Remigration Summit, or my personal goal also, was to make a party from the right. I didn't exclude anybody, but of course it was naturally going to be Lega because Lega has an history of using let's say, fringe terms. Remigration is not fringe anymore because it's mainstream. People use it every day now, but it was at that moment. And so it was only natural that people from Lega started supporting it. And the member of European Parliament actually started using it after the situation in Milan. So the interesting thing is that we pushed remigration as an organization locally, and some local Lega people started using it after we announced RISAM. And there was this Milan situation, the term just exploded. So this really shows how important is to do activism, which is to push terms, to push certain policies into the political mainstream and get them essentially approved and reality. That's what we are doing now. That's what our goal. But we're not doing it from a national standpoint. This is the difference between the identitarians and pretty much everybody else. We acknowledge that immigration is a European challenge. Like, even if Italy applied remigration, closed its borders, the immigrants would pass through the Balkans, would pass through Spain, would just find a way. That's why also in Italy it's really hard because Italians have, and that's an autocritic, let's say, have this closed mentality. They think they are an island on their own. That's not what Europe is. Europe is a continent. We need to act like a continent on this issue. On other issues, then I can say no. But on immigration, which is something that is taking Europe by storm, we need to act as a continent. That is why the Remigration Summit was a European event. Even though it was in Milan, it was a European event. And we need to remind that there were also other politicians. There was Lena Cotre from AfD, who is a regional parliament member. You know, in Germany they have a federation, so they have different levels. Then, so another mainstream political figure, let's say, AfD is right now the strongest party in Germany. Then we had people from Chega that then got that great result in their elections in Portugal. We had people from Zemmour party, Reconquête, which is not mainstream, of course, but it's the only party in France that talks about remigration because Marine Le Pen just despises remigration. And this shows that there is a lot of interest in remigration from this political right-wing sphere that is essentially needs to be pushed again in the right direction, because the challenge is not to let politicians distance themselves from the term, because politicians care only about votes. We need to be reminded of that. Unfortunately, there are some politicians like Rossano Sasso, also from Lega, member of the Italian parliament, that supported and who was the first to use the remigration term in parliament in Italy, and it was great to see. We need to be reminded that politicians care about votes, and so we need to make remigration attractive to them and to the people. So the politicians will just follow what's attractive. That's the strength of activism. That's what we need to keep doing in the whole of the European sphere.
Anti-immigrant sentiment is rising because people see what's happening on the streets of Europe. So it will get stronger with time and attract the attention of a lot of political parties. But in my opinion, it's a good sign that there are still some political parties and member of political parties, mainstream, who are willing to say it openly. It tells us that there's still some freedom of speech and there's still some bravery among the European politicians. So not everything is lost. And in my opinion, it will grow over the time because people see what the political left did to Europe and your country, what it's trying to do to my country. And what is important, in my opinion, 95% of politicians in Europe, they are left-wing politicians. If you take Starmer, if you take Macron, they are not liberals or anything. They are left-wing, and 100 years ago they would be probably considered extreme left-wing. And that's the problem because it's the political left that started this process, that opened the doors of Europe, that's bringing in a lot of people because of welfare. You talked about it at the beginning. People in Africa or Asia know that they will be treated very, very well here in Europe, that they will get money, houses, whatever. Political left is responsible for it because they are giving it to them. But please tell me, what's the situation in Italy? Because at the beginning, when Meloni won, it was said that she's such a right-wing person and that she will stop the immigration. Some people were even saying that she's extreme right, which is nothing true in my opinion. Did the situation with illegal immigration improve since she took office?
So Meloni, I'll just do a premise. I was in Fratelli d'Italia until 2020, so right after COVID, the end of 2020, and I left the party because I had the possibility to see what was going on inside. And what I saw was a really centralized structure around a few people which decided everything. And those few people, I doubted their moral standpoint. So Meloni essentially, then after, when she won the elections, she demonstrated that her moral standpoint was not truthful to what she said, even though when she was young, she was extreme right, like she was. Um, but then she essentially betrayed her own principles, which is something that, mm, excluding, let's say, the political affiliation, if you're something, if you believe in something, you do not betray what you believe in. Otherwise, the value of you as a person is not that high. So Meloni betrayed her own principles. We must also say that in 2021 she became a member of the Aspen Institute, an institute which is right now in the hands of this person, which is a member of the World Economic Forum. So it's all interconnected, as always. So she's part of this globalist organization. Even if that's not important, what she's doing with her, as of now, we have been 2 years, 3 years with Meloni, and nothing has tangibly changed. There have been, yes, a small reduction in illegal crossings, but that's insignificant. And the only person who stopped illegal immigration in Italy was Salvini when he wasn't even in government as the prime minister. He was the interior minister. And Meloni, what she's doing now, like 2 days ago, she announced that her government will bring 500,000 legal immigrants in Italy in the next 3 years. 500,000 from countries like North Africa, like the Middle East, like the southeastern area of Asia. And everybody in Italy is confused as of first, why? Because we have a crisis of emigration of young people emigrating to other countries because they cannot find work here because the wages are too low, and they refuse to acknowledge this, and they just bring in immigrants to lower the wages even further. So that's another problem. And also about illegal immigration, they didn't do anything as a government to effectively reduce and prevent illegal immigration from happening. There were just some arrests of mafia people that were involved in human trafficking, but that's not enough because yes, you can tackle the mafia like you're doing, but in my opinion, without dictatorship, you cannot eliminate mafia. That's just a fact because they will just continue doing what they do. If you remove one, there will be another. So an effective way to avoid having illegal immigration is to make, again, make it unattractive to these people, economically and legally unattractive. But what they did was keep the legal structure that allowed illegal immigration happening. Like there is a law in Italy that was passed some time ago, which is called Legge Zampa, Zampa law, which forbids Italian authorities to control the age and the nationality of an individual. Like you cannot do medical exams on these individuals, like bone exams, etc., to see the real age, because that would be discriminatory to them. And it was passed, of course, when the left was in government. And that would be the first law that needs to be abolished to do anything against illegal immigration, because many of these people coming in Italy, they declare themselves to be minors when they have 20 or something years of age. And they get this protection that minors have, and they can do anything because they have this protection. And also, you cannot check for their real country of origin. And this is another problem because if you can find where the person is from, you can control if they have committed crimes there. And if they have committed crimes, you're allowed to throw them out. But this cannot happen because of this law. And the first thing everybody expected was to them, in the first 100 days of government or so, to just abolish this. And they didn't. They are just proposing legal immigration, as I expected, because when Melone won, I was telling everybody, you will see, she will do the usual civic nationalist thing and do legal immigration. She will just talk about illegal immigration. She will not even reduce it that much. And she will use legal immigration just to, oh, yeah, of course, if they come here legally, then it's fine. No, the problem is the mass. This is something that people are refusing to talk about because they are scared of it. But there is some people who need to talk about it, like some people in Lega. They're starting to use the term mass immigration and not illegal immigration. Illegal immigration is just a part of the problem. The real problem is mass immigration. So we need to tackle it. And Meloni is not doing anything. Also, it was quite interesting to see that the Remigration Summit, which I'm not exaggerating now, the Remigration Summit was the most discussed topic in Italy in May. There was nobody who didn't know about it. Like it was the most important national topic, and there was no communication from the whole Fratelli d'Italia structure. No communication. Just one press release from a local administrator in Milan. Nothing else, because the local administrator in Milan, of course, is in coalition with Lega, who has the majority in Lombardia as of now. So they were quite forced to do it. But the whole party didn't say anything except another thing I need to mention, but it's because of his institutional role, not because he was interested about it. The interior minister of Italy, who is a member of Fratelli d'Italia, when he was asked by the press about banning, not by the press, sorry, but in parliament by some members of the left, because they did a parliament interrogation to try and ban it in parliament. They tried to make the government ban the event. So that's how high the thing went. And during the discussion, the Melone was not saying anything, of course. She ignored the whole situation. She's smart. She's smart. The interior minister said, we cannot ban anything like that because it's a conference. And even though we do not share the ideas proposed, so they just admitted it, we cannot ban it. Okay, so people believed, oh, you see, the interior minister is with us. No, he just said he cannot ban a conference of which he doesn't share the ideas. So they're not really with us. The current government is just the usual civic nationalist structure, which we despise, honestly, because these people ride the tide of anti-immigration sentiment of people wanting a solution because it is not being xenophobic or anything. This is frustrated people that see their country taken over by criminals that are allowed to do anything they want without repercussion, whilst their wages go down, their houses are given away, their churches are getting burned, because this is what's happening in Europe that nobody talks about also. All these churches just being here for a millennia and then suddenly they go up in flame. Yeah, of course, it just happens because of climate change, let's say it like this. And so people are frustrated, and it's becoming a real problem, as I said before, because in Milan, for example, there was this phenomena during this year called Articolo 52, which is the 52nd article of the Constitution, which states that it's a citizen's duty to protect its homeland, etc. And that's the name that a group of people used. And these people started going around and beating up immigrants. That's what happened in Milan. And that's not a good thing, because this shows that there is no government to handle these issues. And so citizens just go around, risk their own life and their own standing, because they will have legal repercussion, of course, because they feel there is no government to handle these issues for them. So this is how desperate the situation is in a country like Italy, which is one of the few countries that have still a really strong ethnic majority in its own country. Because in Italy, the process that went through in France, in Germany, Sweden, in the UK didn't really happen, excluding big cities like Milan. But still, you can see how desperate the situation is in Italy. We cannot imagine how bad. Well, I had the pleasure, let's say, of talking about it with German activists and some people in France. The situation there is way worse. Like, there is people saying that in those countries there will be civil war, etc., because of Islam. That's really a big issue in France and Germany, because those countries do not have a strong culture like we have in Italy. Even though here we have a problem of Islamization too. There was an election right after the summit in this small Italian city where the Muslim population is a third. I don't know why, probably because those immigrants were sent there in mass. This is really not a common thing in Italy. But somehow Lega managed to win the elections there, which shows that citizens in a place with a lot of immigrants will oppose this, because they see that mass immigration doesn't bring benefits.
Unfortunately, I'm afraid that the political left is also bringing a lot of immigrants to, in time, give them citizenship, to enlarge their base of voters. They did it in California, in United States, and no Republican is able to win the office of president, for example, in there. But from what you said, it arises that we have a problem of fake right-wing politicians in Europe who pretend to be right-wing. I think the example at the moment is also, you've mentioned Front National in France and Marine Le Pen. They went so much to the left that now Eric Zemmour and Reconquête came as a real right-wing party. And what is more, you compared Meloni to Salvini, and we heard about this scandalous trial because Salvini stopped boats coming illegally to Italy, bringing a lot of immigrants from Northern Africa. And he was accused of kidnapping people. They wanted to throw him in jail. And in my opinion, it's another proof that the courts, the institutions in Italy, but also in Europe, because we have the same problem in Poland. Donald Trump has the same problem in the United States. It's taken over by leftists. Don't you think so?
It's a fact. In Italy, we have a big problem, like in other countries, as you said, of left wing, but really communist judges that were infiltrated, that infiltrated en masse the judiciary power during the 60s, 70s, 80s, that whole period, because, as I said, there was this big communist party here in Italy, and there were those social revolutions around the place, which allowed these people to get in power. The one of the ways you can do a revolution and take over and do a coup d'état is to infiltrate the institutions of the state and gradually transform it to something you want. This is what's happening. This is what has happened. And we have judges here that even demonstrated with migrants or against the government, which is crazy because that would be what that would mean normally that that judge is politically leaning on one side or the other, and so they cannot be trusted with judging lives of people. We have seen it in Belgium with Dries van Langenhove, one of my fellow activist and a father and one of the organizers of RISAM, was convicted to 1 year of suspended prison sentence by a leftist judge, an openly leftist judge, without proof, without anything, just because there was this ideologically motivated sentence against him. So right now they deprive the person of its freedom because the judge is from the left. We see it with Donald Trump in the United States, with local judges just deciding the fate of the whole nation. And so the problem is really in the courts. And this is nothing new because also Berlusconi, during his era, had years and years and years of processes because left-wing judges wanted to bring him down, because Berlusconi is the reason we did not have a communist party takeover in the 90s in Italy when the First Republic fell. And so they hated him for that, and they started going against him. But I do not want to dwell on the Berlusconi figure because it's very complicated. Talking about Salvini, he risked 6 years in jail for doing his job as an interior minister. He acted completely within the law, even though the law, as I said, is not really on our side, let's say, because legge Zampa and all other stuff. They accused him of kidnapping those people. And just a few days ago, they said, oh, the government needs to give money to these migrants because they were kept there against their will. So this is completely crazy. And it's, of course, the usual judge that from either Milan or Tuscany, which is very communist, or other places, will say, okay, I see this case, I do not like how it went, I will open it and I will demand some stuff from the government. And it's a system because these judges don't do these things on their own personal conscience. They get a call or they get an indirect contact from the political party or from that political figure or from this system of influence that's handled by the usual people. And this judge will just say, okay, and they will start doing it. So it's a system. It's not something that's happening randomly. And to see some countries like the United States that are tackling it because the president has a lot of power there. We do not have that commodity here in Italy. We have the prime minister, and then we have the president of the republic, who is right now a leftist because we have Mattarella. And the president of the republic, who is the head of let's say the judiciary power, etc., we can say, um, he's not even elected, he's selected. So that's another thing that needed to be changed. Meloni promised to change this because one of the main arguments that Meloni wrote her political campaign on was to make Italy a presidential republic with one president elected by the people. And she, of course, just forgot about it, never talked about it again. And it will be really funny to see in a couple of years, in 2027, Meloni just saying, okay, we govern well, and now we need to consolidate our change and bring back all of this stuff. Meloni also wrote on the platform of blocco navale, like naval blockade for migrants, which is pretty extreme if you think about it, and of course didn't deliver. And she didn't do anything about this judiciary issue except one law they're trying to pass, which is a separation of careers of these magistrates, of these judges, a reform of justice system, but it's just a soft slap on the wrist that says, okay, if you're a magistrate, you cannot have a political career, which is normal in my opinion, but it doesn't really change anything, does it? Because they will do anything they want. If you want to tackle the judiciary power, you need total control of the government. And if you have a leftist president of the republic that is selected and not elected, and if you have a parliament which prefers to vote for the jus scholae, which is a proposal from a party in government, Forza Italia, which was Berlusconi party, but was taken over by Tajani, whom I call cagoia. Cagoia is a dialect, North Italian term that means a slug without a shell, okay? Which was used by Gabriele D'Annunzio to define a politician during this time. Little digression here. So this guy proposed a law to grant citizenship to migrants after they complete a school cycle in Italy. The problem with this is that school in Italy, let's say, has a really low quality, and also the usual mass migration problem. Because if this was done with a few people, that wouldn't be a problem. The problem is ethnic substitution. If you grant them citizenship, that's a problem because the local population will just get erased. And with the youth scholar, they are just thinking forwards because right now in the Italian schools, as everywhere, there is substitution going on because right now I do not have numbers here, so I apologize for that. But a big percentage of young people in schools are foreigners, are people who do not even talk Italian, probably, most of them. And the issue is that if you grant them citizenship after a school cycle with a school system that's broken, completely broken, what quality do you get from it? What integration or assimilation? Because assimilation is not the same as integration, is it? Assimilation is when a migrant comes here, speaks the language, understands the culture, picks up the culture, doesn't impose his own customs on people, and it's possible only with a few of them. It's not possible with millions and millions a year that just come here, you throw them in an area, in a city that's handled by migrants, where they speak their own language, where they do their own thing, like it's happening in Paris in London, where migrants do not ever have the need of talking the local language because they just talk their own language. It's like being in their own country. It's the same. And so with this law that's proposed again, I will say it again, by a party in government with the right, so Forza Italia, and which yesterday said, we will vote with the left on this issue, parting government with the right. So it's crazy situation. And you can clearly see that Meloni's government, from these few things I said, is not really what's believed to be outside of Italy, because there is this image of Meloni that's a bit being cleansed right now, but it's still really strong, of Meloni being a good government figure. She will solve everything. She will save Europe from migrants, etc. No, it's not going to happen. It's going to get worse. This is what Meloni government is. She is a gatekeeper. Fratelli Italia is a gatekeeper party because they switched completely. And this is even worse than having a left-wing government, in my opinion, because the left doesn't care about this legal immigration or anything. They will just throw migrants in, and this would allow people to be more opposed to it. The problem with gatekeepers is the fact that they handle public opinion in a way that people will not really oppose it as strongly as they would. And so when the left is failing, the system will just throw the right, and the right will do the same thing, but slower, in a more controlled manner, so people will not oppose it.
They will manipulate with the language. They will not call it illegal immigration. They will make it legal. That's the point of what you're saying, I suppose. But when it comes to European leaders like Meloni and even Orban, there is one more problem, and the name of the problem is European Union. European Union is ruled by the leftists. European Union is not democratic. It's ruled by European Commission. And it's not a coincidence that one of the founding fathers is Altiero Spinelli, Bolshevik communist. So, and European Union is encouraging this mass immigration. They are supporting the NGOs on the Mediterranean, and they are threatening the rulers of Europe, saying, if you won't allow the immigration, we will cut your funds. We will sue you to European courts. We will deny you some financial stuff, because usually they are using the finances to force some kind of decision. And Meloni is also she has problems also with that, because the problem is that the certain states in Europe are no longer sovereign. The European Union law is above them, so that's a huge problem, and we know who rules the European Union. But coming to your Remigration Summit, there was one more scandal, because you've mentioned Dries van Langenhoven, and I have no doubt it's a political trial set to destroy him. But you also had problems because some activists from Germany tried to reach your event, but they were stopped by German authorities, and they were not allowed to leave Germany. They were told that if they go to your summit, they will damage the reputation of Germany. I've never heard something like that. It reminds
That's
you. It
the
reminds
political police.
Yeah, it
That's it.
reminds you of USSR and the communist era, where people were not allowed to leave Poland or Russia. So we in Eastern Europe, we know that. But I've never heard that after the fall of the communist regime. But it tells us what direction some countries are heading. Very dangerous direction.
Yeah, those activists, which by the way managed to come to the event because they went to the airport in Munich. They were stopped. They were um, arrested for a brief time. They then decided to cross the border with other means. They managed to get to the event, which was great, by the way, by them. It was amazing to see them there. We had them on stage, of course, and they gave a speech. And the crazy thing is that when they went back with the plane, well, of course they planned it because they also had the DDR shirts on, and they landed and they got arrested. They were kept several hours. Their phones were taken away because you violated our orders, etc. And then they were released. But the worst thing is that they had They have a um, student fraternity house there, and that place was raided by the police, which destroyed their door. There are videos of the door handle in the hands of one of the activists. They took all the electronics away. They took also, I saw they took tables away because they were illegally doing gatherings there. That's illegal apparently in Germany because they violated that order. So that's really telling you how bad the situation is in Germany. But in the whole, like, German or English area, the free speech situation is completely completely out of control because the government can do anything they want against its own citizens. In the same period, those activists were raided by the police in this brutal manner because the German police just does it in this brutal manner. They will blow your door away, they will enter, do anything, trash the place, just to give you this mental intimidation tactic.
To scare you.
170 people were raided by the German police in the same day, I think, because of social media posts. That's the situation in Germany. If you insult a politician, there is this law that you can get raided and then sanctioned because you insulted him, because you didn't allow him to do his job. If that happened in Italy, there would be like 10 raids a day because people here are really fed up with politicians in general. But this is crazy. Like that speech, free speech can get you raided, can get you sanctioned, can get you imprisoned. Like this, it was a political process because the year in prison of suspended sentence was not the key. The key was that the first sentence from the leftist judge had in the sentence 10 years of suspended civil rights, which means he wouldn't have been able to run for any public office or to do anything publicly. And that was the key of the whole thing that fortunately, let's say, did not go through because that's for what he has done. That was even illegal to propose. And so it was taken out. But he risked 10 years of suspended civil rights, which is crazy. This shows that everything that's going on with this free speech battles is political. There is nothing else. When a system needs to tackle free speech is because, well, of course, it's losing ground. We have seen that, which also gives hope for everybody. The fact that thinking about the USSR or the DDR, it got even worse, the political situation, the policing situation, as the collapse was getting nearer because they needed to censor everything that was going on because they were losing ground, they were panicking, and so they needed to suppress everything. And this is happening, I believe, also to the left-wing governments here in Europe. And that is another reason that remigration is European. The Remigration Summit is European. The Identitarian movement is European because we can act in every country at the same time, which is more effective than doing it everybody on their own because of what is happening. In Belgium, in Germany, in the UK, it's almost not possible anymore to do anything about activism or all of that. But in other countries like Italy, fortunately, or Portugal, you can still, even though there is repression, because we are facing repression also, Afonso Gonçalves is facing repression. He got his bank account closed, for example, even in Portugal. So we are facing repression, but it's not as hard as in those places. So we can still go on. We can do the Remigration Summit in Italy, for example. We can push these arguments that will spill over to the political sphere in Germany and in other places and in Europe as a whole and in the European Parliament and those places. And we can still achieve metapolitical success by doing so, even though there is this huge repression going on. And yes, the main issue now against remigration, other than the judiciary power and everything else I said, is the European Union, because the European Union is what is allowing all of this to go on. Countries are not sovereign anymore, even less so than before 2008, because Italy, in the crisis, the subprime crisis, thanks to Mario Draghi, which governed the nation a few years ago during COVID, Italy sold half of its public titles to the European Bank to save Europe. So half of the Italian economy is owned by the European Central Bank, which essentially means we are owned by Europe. We cannot do anything. Otherwise, Europe just says, okay, your whole economy just goes up. Other countries that are freer are the only countries in Europe, in the European Union, which can essentially still do whatever they want, are those countries who did not adopt the euro, who still have their own national banks, like Hungary. And so countries like Italy, like France, like Germany, all those countries that have the euro right now, they really cannot do much other than trying to push it in common as a political force in the European Parliament, because that's where the fight is going on. Local sovereign governments will be able to do everything unhinged and unprovoked and without issues if the European government, the European Parliament, is not, let's say, interrupting them, if it's either ignoring them or promoting them. And there is a lot of hope on this, because we can see that organizations like the Patriots for Europe, even though it includes people like Orban or other people like that, like Le Pen and those kind of politicians who are not really good as Melone. But we can see that they are really interested in the remigration proposal. Of course, for them, it's electoral game. They see that the term is really strong because the term is really simple and it can be used really efficiently to promote this view that we are promoting. So you can really use it in the electoral process to gain a lot of votes, as in Austria, the FPÖ won on a platform for remigration. Kickl won because of remigration. So that's also, I went to CPAC and Kickl talked about remigration there. So it's just how things are becoming for the political right. And one must say, okay, they will use the term and then they will drop it. Of course they will. Of course they will. This is what politicians do. They will, during the electoral times, they will say whatever they can say to get in office, to get as much votes as possible, and then they will not deliver. That's the political job, is to give promises you will not complete, let's say. And so what we must do as activists is to create a system of influence and to make remigration a reality, whether they want it or not. Let's say the politicians, whether they want to do it or not, because it will be so attractive, so important to do it, that they cannot do otherwise, because the people will turn against them if they don't deliver. And this is what activism also is about. We need to punish, in a political sense, the politicians that do not deliver. We need to turn the public opinion against them if they do not deliver, which is something normal, because if you're a politician, you run on this platform, you need to deliver. Otherwise, you get the Melonization of European politics, which is something that happened many, many times, even before Meloni came to office. And we can see the same on the left. The remigration thing is so attractive that even a person that they judge really low for everything that happened for the grooming gang scandal, which is Keir Starmer, he's trying to promise some immigration stricter laws about immigration, and to tackle illegal immigration and the safety of people, etc., because he sees that people are turning against immigration in mass. And so to not lose as much votes, he needs to promise stuff against immigration. This is how politics worked and has always worked. And this is what the left has always done, because the left won only because they understood this process. They created their own system of influence. They infiltrated the institutions. They won elections. And even when they didn't win elections, they still managed to push their agenda and get in government because of this system of influence. We are just doing the same on our side. We're building a system of influence to push remigration. This is the whole Remigration Summit project.
And you are very successful with spreading this notion of remigration because it became very, very popular. Even Donald Trump used it. So you are successful in it. Andrea, you wrote on X that you are the last defenders of Europe. I completely agree with you. You are doing a great job. You were doing it for many, many years, your identitarian movement. In my opinion, we are living in the last century of European civilization if some processes that are going on will not be stopped. So we are the last generation. If this what is happening will not be stopped, there will be no Europe as we knew it for 1000 years at the end of 21st century. So I congratulate once more on your great success on the Remigration Summit. We wait for another edition in the next year. I thank you very much for joining me here and for this giving this very, very interesting talk. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. And I'll see you on Resume 26, of
Yes,
course.
I will do everything to get there. So thank you very much. Thank you to our listeners. Goodbye.
Goodbye.